So let's get to it. So welcome everyone to the first session in our series titled Learn to Podcast with Dr. Vibe. My name's Jordan Huntsberger. I'm a program coordinator at Innovation Guelph, and I'm really glad that you could all join us today. I'm joined by my colleague, Diana Train, who is our facility and events manager, who will be helping me on the call today. So thanks very much, Diana. For participants that require ASL interpretation, we have two ASL interpreters on the call today, Sheila and Carolyn from Sign Language Interpreting Associates Ottawa. Please pin or spotlight them to access this call in ASL. We also have enabled the closed captioning feature, and you can turn that on if you'd like using the function on the bottom of your screen. I would like to take a moment to give thanks to our corporate sponsors, Ernst & Young, Reese Informatica, Invest in Guelph, and BDO. We are very grateful for their support that lets us execute events like this one. Before beginning the session today, I would like to give recognition to the land that Guelph is on. We acknowledge that many others here today may be on different territories, so we invite and encourage you each to give recognition to the land that you occupy today and every day. As we gather for today's event, we are reminded that Guelph is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people today. As a city, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work. And today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. In case some of you are new to Innovation Guelph, I will give you a quick background. Innovation Guelph is one of 17 regional innovation centers in Ontario. And while we are located in Guelph, we serve the entire region of Southern Ontario and have one national program. This means that while most of our clients are relatively close by, we do have clients in BC, all the way out to Nova Scotia and all throughout Ontario. We work with our clients, supporting them through multiple stages of business growth, from startup to scale up, with lots of programs, workshops, networking opportunities, and even a trade show called the Ontario Innovation Expo. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce the main event. Thank you for joining us for our first of 3 sessions. Today's session is called Podcasting 101, the Basics. We will hold the other 2 sessions every 2 weeks until February 16th at the same time, same place on Zoom. Diana will post a link in the chat box toward the end of today's session if you haven't yet secured your spot for the second series. And a recording of the session will be emailed out to you once it becomes available and will be accessible through our Innovation Guelph YouTube channel. You will also receive a copy of the presentation slides in that email as well. Dr. Vibe will be pausing for questions throughout today's presentation, and you can use the raise your hand function or post your questions in the chat box at any time. Dr. Vibe will also have a rules of engagement slide where he will cover some guidelines for how to engage with him during today's interactive session. So I'm so excited to introduce you to the man of the hour, Dr. Vibe. Dr. Vibe has been a host and producer of the award-winning online show, The Dr. Vibe Show, for over 12 years and has done over 4,000 online interviews with people from all over the world. Dr. Vibe has worked with the City of Toronto. He is a business advisor for the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce's Elevated Business Project and has been the co-host and co-producer of the only online show for dads and fathers in the world, sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. He has won 2 awards through the Canadian Ethnic Media Association and has been a certified coach since June 2015. Dr. Vibe's bio could go on for a few more minutes, but I'm going to let him take it from here, as I know he'll be sharing more information about himself in his presentation, but I think we can all agree that we are in very good hands over the next couple sessions. So Dr. Vibe, please feel free to take over screen sharing from me and take it away for us.
Okay, let's do that. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone is doing fine. And I'm very excited to be part of this event, 3-session event with all of you today. And I'm looking forward to it. Before I go any further, there's some people as where I come from, I gotta hail up. First up, I gotta hail up Linda Horowitz, because Linda and I met at an event a number of months ago. And when I go to events, I purposely sit at tables where I don't know people. And I sat beside Linda and we began chatting. And in about 10 minutes, Linda said, I'm gonna follow you on LinkedIn right now. And she followed me on LinkedIn right then. And within 24 hours, I had sent her a video message. And she said, Dr. Vibe, I think what you do would be very helpful to our community. And I said, yes. So first and foremost, I want to thank Linda for saying yes. Second of all, gotta hail up Jordan. Jordan and I have been twin kids of different mothers for about the last 3 months. We've been meeting every week, going over this for you to make sure that it best serve you. So Jordan, huge amount of thanks. Huge amount of thanks. And I know that there's more great stuff to come. At least 2 more sessions, by the way. Also want to thank Mickey from Innovation Guelph. We had a great conversation 2 days ago, and it was just enriching, enlightening, and very empowering to speak with her and get just that good, sorry to take the word, good vibe from Mickey. And Mickey, I have a common associate, so that was good. And I will say this, the associate that Mickey and I know, he's very high ranking in the Ontario Economic Development Department for the province of Ontario, and he speaks very, very highly of Innovation Guelph. So if you're hanging with Innovation Guelph, you're in the right place at the right time. Also want to thank Diana for being here today. No, you're part of the team, absolutely. And our 2 interpreters, huge amount of thanks. And one person I'm not leaving out, he isn't here, Dan. Dan the man. I've been told Dan is the man. And these slides between Dan and Jordan, they make me look good. So if I was presenting to you face to face, I always like to thank the people who make me look and sound good. So Jordan and Dan, thank you so much. So before we go any further today, I want people to just put in the chat where you're chiming in from, what city, where you, if you want, share your business if you want to. So I'd just like to get a quick little, and I'm a very engaging person, by the way. So I'm an energy guy. So I just want to know, just type in where you're chiming in from. Okay. Guelph, Brampton, Fergus. Haven't heard about Fergus in a long time. Used to work with someone when I used to work at Adidas Canada from, Hamilton, Quebec City, Guelph, Oakville, Kitchener. Fantastic. Love it. Lakefield. Okay. Halifax. Aldofina. I know Aldofina. Yes. Paul Osborne. Know Paul Osborne for many years. Fantastic. Good stuff. So good to have people from at least all over East. I don't know if we got anyone from West yet, from all over East. A gorgeous spice company. Very nice. Okay. Now, my next question. You didn't think you'd be getting questions from me, but I ask questions, by the way. Okay. What do you want to get from today's session? Is there anything you want to get from today's session? Type it in the chat. Learn to podcast, technical info about podcasting. Okay. The courage to speak. I love that. The most important thing to know about your first Oh gosh, that's not too loaded of a question. Learn how to improve the structure of podcasting. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, just here to learn. That's nice. What equipment would you need? Okay. How to build confidence, dividing your content. Great. Fantastic. So let me tell you, everything you said, I had them in my head. I don't have them as much now, but as I was sharing with the team before we went live, I still do shows where I forget to turn on my mic. So I'm not perfect. So I hear you. I have those questions sometimes in my head too, a better understanding of how to set up podcasts. Okay. Now, over the next 3 sessions, you'll get all your questions answered. But if you need to know something during a session, I'll do my best to answer it. But if it's going to come up in a future session, I won't go totally deep. I'll go high level. Is that fair? All right. So let's do the share thing. Okay, so can anyone see the Learn to Podcast with Dr. Vibe screen? All right, let's rock and roll, family. So podcasting 101, the basics. It is Thursday, January 19th in my world. I hope it is in yours. So done the hello. So I want everyone for the next, as long as you can, just relax, be willing to learn, definitely ask questions. Very, very important. And something I will share, because as you see, as I go on, I do a number of different things. Don't be afraid to ask a question. A lot of times the fastest way you move forward is by asking a question. And don't feel bad if you don't know something, because I'm a firm believer, the more you know, the more you need to know. So actually, I'm going to do a pop quiz. Does anyone know who that artist is in that picture? Well, put it in the chat room, Diana. Come on. You say, okay, who is it? Lionel Richie. All right, good. So we got some people who know who Lionel is. So that's, and the famous song, Hello. So I thought I'd put that up there. So next up, rules of engagement. So I just want Jordan to come back on with me for a few minutes.
Yep.
So we just laid down some ground rules for not only this session, but the next two sessions. So Jordan.
So like I mentioned earlier, questions are very encouraged throughout the presentation. You don't have to hold them until the end, but we would appreciate if you could either post them in the chat box if you'd like, or use the raise hand feature, which is in at the bottom of your screen through reactions. So that'll let us call on you if you'd like to speak your question out loud. That's totally fine. But that lets us ensure that only one person is talking at a time. So please and thank you.
Anything else you want to add, Jordan? Is that good?
That's it from me.
Okay. I will just want to add, have fun. I'm going to do my best, but I can't force you to have fun, but I want you to have fun. So I'm going to try to bring as much energy that you make it as interactive as possible. I will take questions in real time, because I know that sometimes if you get a question asked and it doesn't get answered for another half an hour, I want to make sure I can do it to the best of my ability. If there's anything I can't answer, please, at the end of this, I'll have my email address, send it to me so I can do some research and I can get back to you personally on that question. So parking lot, I'll parking lot it and then bring it back to me, or send me an email and I'll look into it and get back to you definitely before the next presentation, if not sooner. And other than that, let's get going. So next up, a little about me. So Jordan gave some highlights at the beginning. So this is one of the scenes from one of my 4,000 conversations from the Dr.Vibe show. So how did I get started with the Dr.Vibe show? Many years ago, when I had hair, I had graduated from university and I was happy that I didn't have to write any essays or do work that I couldn't relate to. And there was a bookstore in Toronto called Burke's Bookstore. And the husband and wife are two wonderful people, Sam and Rita Burke. And I used to always go into their bookstore and just hang out. And one day I went in there, picked up a book. Actually, I will bring it out. Let me just. So it was a book called Black Men, Obsolete, Single, and Dangerous. Yes, I use props, and you should use props when you're sharing. Picked the book up, read the whole book that night. And I said, some way, somehow, I want to start a podcast about, at that time, I was really passionate about Black men and getting to hear their stories. That's how I started. So all I had when I started my podcast way back when was a laptop, a mic, this microphone. This was the first microphone I used. It's called a Blue Snowball. Some people may or may not have seen it. Still a very good microphone if you want to start off. And a dream. And myself and a host, we did our first podcast around the corner from where I am right now at my kitchen table. And we went and did a few shows for about 3-4 months. And then I said, you know what, let's take a break. And for me, most of my ideas have a birth, death, and, oh, Camille has that microphone as well. Hey, Camille Smith. Hey, Camille, good to see you. A birth, death, and resurrection. So we came back and started to do some more shows. And I said, you know what? People are just going to get tired of listening to me all the time. What can I do? And I like to keep things easy. So I said, hey, why don't I start interviewing friends that I know? And I literally would go to dinner parties, put my microphone and my laptop down, and myself and my friends would just start talking about different subjects. So then I progressed and said, okay, what about getting people I don't know? So there's a gentleman, he's still alive today, named Michael Williams, Back in the day when Much Music first started out, he was the first Black VJ they hired on their platform. But the thing is, I live in Scarborough, Michael lives in Hamilton. And at that time, I did all my conversations face to face. And I said to myself, what happens if I'm in Mississauga? Michael calls me and he cancels. Waste of time. So I went online, searched for how to get help with your podcast. And I'm lazy at times too. The first one that was there was called the Podcaster Studio, hosted by a gentleman out of Washington at that time, Washington, D.C., named Ray Ortega. And he basically said, Dr. Vibe, your goal is to be the most, when it comes to people in doing interviews who are Black men in Canada, they think of you first. Never forgotten that. So always get people to think of you first. Whatever you're doing your show about, you want them to think about you first. So that got me going. He then introduced me to a gentleman named Mike Phillips out of North Carolina, because I just didn't want to do online conversations with people around Southern Ontario. I wanted to do around the world. And Mike Phillips at that time was based in North Carolina. He had 25 years in audio engineering experience. So I said, Mike, I want to do podcasts with people all around the world. And he said, well, Dr. Vibe, if you want to do that, you need to get a mixer. I said, Mike, the only mixers I know is when I go to a club at that time, or if I go to a concert. But he had more experience than me. I had no audio engineering experience. He had 25 years. So over 6 hours via Skype, we got that all set up. So that was the start of the Dr. Vibe journey. So I want to just share with that, if you're choosing to do a podcast, relationships are important, because they're going to be people you're going to need help from, because it's time consuming. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. So this is the Dr. Vibe show. As Jordan mentioned earlier, for the last 3 years, I've been the co-host and co-producer of the Dad Central show. It's the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And it's the only collaboration like that they have with a fatherhood group in the world. And through that collaboration for the last 2 years, 2022 and 2021, we've reached out directly and indirectly to over 100,000 fathers around the world. So that's another thing I do. Also, for the last 13 years, my content has been featured on a website called the Good Men Project, which is one of the most viewed sites in the world for men. They get 3 million unique visitors a month and 6 million page views a month. And I'm the only podcast that's featured on that platform. This is a picture of me receiving one of my Canadian Ethnic Media Association awards. And it was actually this one here. Well, no, that's the second one. This was the first one, or reverse order. This was the second one. This is the one here for 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner. The picture you're looking at here is the one I received for their Innovation Award back in 2018, which is their second highest level of achievement award. So 2 awards from them. I'm also an advisor for the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. So I help entrepreneurs from the ideation stage to the $100,000 revenue stage. So I love working with entrepreneurs because I'm one, and I love working with entrepreneurs. I was blessed last year to co-create and co-facilitate a program for Black Canadians who are on Ontario Works, who wanted to get information and support becoming entrepreneurs. So I was a co-creator of that program. And they also asked a lot about podcasting too, but that was a really good program. And again, I'm going to talk about relationships throughout the next 3 sessions. The lady who reached out to me, I did a presentation for back in 2007, and she reached out to me. So again, relationships are important. And I also do work with Salvation Army clients in regards to motivation, goal setting plans, and that just started in the last 2 years. And then finally, there is an organization you'll see on this screen called Libsyn. They are the biggest company in the world that hosts podcasts. And they just started a series last year about Black podcasting voices, and they asked me to be their first guest during the series. And Libsyn is a great host for podcasting. We'll get to them probably in the second section. So before we go any further, does anyone have any questions about my journey? Everyone's quiet. Okay, no worries. Well, again, ask questions anytime you want, but that's just some of my journey. And I will tell you again, if it wasn't for the relationships that I have formed, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you right now. It sounds like you have a great one so far. Your journey's, thank you. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Great journey. Thank you. I appreciate that. Really do. All right. So we got learning objectives screen today. So we're going to talk today about what is a podcast. Oh, Ryan, Dr.Vibe is the truth. Thank you, Ryan. Well, Ryan's a little biased. Ryan is my co-host on one of the shows I do on Monday and Friday mornings called The Morning Vibe. And Ryan is actually the co-executive director of the African Canadian Business Network, another great person that you should get to know, does a lot of great work, not only with the African Canadian community, but in the business community in general. Great organization. So thank you for the props, Ryan. Very much love it. So let's get to this. Learning objectives. Love the journey. Thank you. 2 celebrities here. Everyone's a celebrity, Camille. You too. Everyone on screen is a celebrity because we all have a story. Thank you. So let's get to learning objectives. So today we're going to talk about what is a podcast, the history of podcasting. Is it right for you and your business? Big question. And then what are you going to talk about during your podcast? So before we get into the next slide, I'd like people in the chat, I have a question for you. What is a podcast? Put it in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute and come on in. There are no wrong answers. Online radio show, online learning tool, someone sharing knowledge through the sound, an audio recording that you share with people. Okay. It's a vocal place to inspire and get inspired, something you listed on your too, like a call-in radio show, an online talk show. Very nice. See, Jordan didn't expect this because when Jordan and I were planning it out, she didn't expect me to ask audience questions. So I said, I had some surprises for her today. So this is and I want you, oh God, what is the best mixer? I'll answer that question right now. If you are using a USB, I would say there is a company called Behringer that has mixers, and there's also Alesis, Alesis, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on a mixer, like maximum $150 USB if you're using USB. But again, Camille, you have my contact information, so you can contact me directly offline on that. But what I will do is maybe I can list some mixers and maybe a little bit ahead of time. Well, you've been doing podcasts for a while, so maybe time for you to go the mixer route. So no problem. Online, let's go a radio show without commercials and a specific topic. Well, they can't have commercials, podcasts. All right, that's good. Anyone else with an answer? All of them good. All of them make sense. Okay, what is a podcast? By definition, it's a digital audio file made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or a mobile device, typically available as a series, new installments of which can be received by subscribers automatically. And the term podcast is a portmanteau, which is a collaboration of the iPod and a broadcast. Did anyone ever own an iPod or still owns one, by the way? Okay, I see hands up. So iPod. So podcast is a combination of iPod and broadcast, podcast. And it started mostly as an independent way for individuals to get their message out there and build a community of people with similar interests. So the term podcasting was first used in 2004, but podcasting as a medium has been around since 2000. So we're coming up to 25 years that podcasting has been around. So That is a little bit of background. I want to get some historical background on it. I see people still saying they have iPods. I'd like to know if you still have them. Linda, do you still have your iPod? Okay. Shauna goes, I wish. Okay, I still have mine too. And Linda's in her car. Yes. So Linda, I want to rock with you one day in the car together with your iPod. Excellent. Oh, Camille says mine broke a few decades ago. No problem. All right. So let's get to some fun here. Now, let's take a look at the benefits of starting a podcast. It can provide a way to develop ideas and share your expertise with people who might want to hire you or buy your product. So we have a perfect example right here. I'm collaborating with IG, my expertise in podcasting. And some of you may want to consult with me offline saying, Dr. Vibe, how can I get this podcast thing happening? So it's ways of getting people to hire you or buy a product. It's part of your marketing in a business. It's part of your marketing. It shouldn't be the only thing you present to your clients, but it's part of your golf clubs of marketing and your marketing bag. It's one of your clubs. It's a great way to network with colleagues and develop new relationships. When I've done over 4,000 conversations, the amount of people that I have met digitally is amazing. And the relationships, and a lot of my tightest digital relationships are with people who are not from Canada. You know, having a global community, and now because we more than ever live in a digital world, a podcast can provide great ways of developing new relationships, meaningful relationships, not only business-wise, but personal-wise. So it's a great way of networking, very, very important. And it's also a way of deepening the relationships you already have with a more intimate form of content. So don't just look at just putting stuff out there. There is so many different uses that podcast, or so many different things that podcasts can provide you, especially if you're going in the business world. So I just want to give you an interesting fact. And I know someone's going to ask me this. How many podcasts are there going right now? Anyone to guess? How many podcasts are listed in the world right now? So pop quiz for people. Take a guess. Hundreds of thousands. Okay. Anyone else? 22 million. That's a little high, but not bad. 1 million plus. That's close. You're a little under. Feel like I'm the late Bob Barker in Price is Right. That's low. 100,000 low. Higher than 1 million. It definitely increased over COVID. Yes. John, I did say plus 2.5 is close. Okay. So right now there are about 2.3 million podcasts listed in the world. Now, people say, well, that's so many. Believe it or not, only about 300,000 of them are done on a regular basis. So don't feel that, oh, if I start my podcast, no one's going to listen to it. If you provide good content, you engage with your audience, you will have good success. It may take some time, though. Just want to realize that. But a lot of people don't do podcasting regularly. Now, for myself, for people who know me, I do 4 shows a week, which is definitely above average for most people. But I love what I do. And I'm serving my audience, but consistency is definitely a key. So does anyone have questions about the benefits of starting a podcast? And Carolyn Carter, am I going at a good pace, by the way? Good. Just want to make sure, want to check in. Anyone have any questions so far? What frequency is regular? Once a month or more often? Is consistency the key? Or what is, okay, so great questions. I would say as long as if you're going to do a weekly podcast, do a weekly podcast. If you're doing it once every 2 weeks, do it once every 2 weeks. You want consistency, so you determine how often you do it, but make sure you're consistent. So if let me just come back here, the person, let me go here. So you asked, I can't see the person's name. Okay. So Lorraine, if you started a podcast and you told your listeners you're going to do a broadcast every week, and you do your first one and you don't come back on for another 3 weeks, what do you think is going to happen to your viewership or growing your viewership? So that's the key. Set expectations of your audience right at the beginning. Tell them how often you're going to be on, but make sure it's comfortable for you. And Camille made a good comment there. Being committed is everything. Consistency is very much important, and you got to enjoy what you're doing. Because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, not only is it going to impact you, your audience is going to get impacted. They'll see that you don't enjoy what you're doing. Does that answer your question in regards to consistency? Anybody? Okay. You're very welcome. Thank you, Lorraine. Fantastic. All right. So let's talk about, is podcasting right for your business? Now, thank you, Saja. I appreciate you. And Paul, great. I also want to say, I'm not going to take up until 2:30. I'm going to leave a decent amount of time for questions because I think the interaction is more important. So just know that I'm going to stop yapping constantly, probably 2:15 at the absolute latest. I want to leave time for interaction and questions. So just want to make you aware of that. So let's talk about if podcasting is right for your business. So even if you're going to outsource your podcast to a team or an editor, you're going to be responsible for planning your podcast, creating your podcast, and refining your audio content. Now, I just want to make a point here. I know some people got questions about video broadcasting. I'm mostly focusing on the audio part, but the core things here will apply whether you're doing an audio podcast or video podcast. I first started way back when doing audio podcasts, and now I've transitioned to video. But every video podcast I do, I also offer an audio version. Why? Well, say someone doesn't have good Wi-Fi in a foreign country. It takes less bandwidth for someone to listen to something audio compared to video. And I'm sure you've been on Zoom calls or some sort of video call, and the video is terrible. Most people will tolerate bad audio, but they won't tolerate bad video. So the core things I'm saying here apply to audio or video. Yeah, audio, true, more accessible. Yeah, so that's just me. I want to make sure I offer both. But these core things, whether it's a video podcast or audio podcast, same thing. Same thing. So again, outsourcing it's going to take time. Like right now, I'm blessed. I have a team that does a lot of my audio editing, but it still takes time. I'll be honest with everyone here. I still personally go after my guests. I interview my guests. So I still have some time, but I've taken stuff off my plate so I can dedicate to other areas of my business and of my podcasts. So I'm going to recommend that when you think about starting a podcast, you may want to talk to someone like me and say, okay, Dr. Vibe, what people do I need on my team, or what are the steps I need to do in doing my podcast? And that'll come up in part 2, but realize it takes time, whether you're doing it yourself or you have a team doing it for you. You need to bank some time. And also, do you have the time to produce a high quality show? And if you don't have the time to produce a show, maybe podcasting isn't for you. And I'm not trying to be hard on you. I just want to make sure you manage your energy and manage your time. And maybe it isn't a podcast. Maybe you want to do blogs or posts on different platforms of social media, like a Facebook or an Instagram, because again, there's a lot more time involved doing a podcast than doing a blog on an Instagram or a Facebook. So I just want to make sure, I want to be real. Yeah, Paul says collective work and responsibility. Absolutely. Now, I've been there when I've had to do podcasts by myself. And I think Paul's known me long enough. I've had to do a lot on my own. So I encourage you, if you can't do it on your own, or even if you think you can, find people who can help you. And I'll give you a little bit of a gem right now. There are a lot of colleges and universities that offer interns that can help you. So if you want information on how you can potentially get those sort of resources, certainly touch base with me. And there's also government programs that can provide interns for you on a project basis to hire. And actually, when they're finished their project for you, the government pays them. You don't even pay a cent out of your pocket. That's an extra. Next question. What are your thoughts on encouraging entrepreneurs to seek opportunities to be interviewed on podcasts? I don't mind that because at least you'll get your face out there. And as long, I would say to that point, yes, being interviewed if you don't have a podcast is great. I just want to make sure that whatever content information you give them, it's active. So you have an active email address. It'd be great if you also have an active website. And if you also have some presence on social media platforms, that helps. But anytime you get a chance to be interviewed, take advantage of it. Please do. And funny enough, I hadn't been doing any interviews or people interviewing me till the last 2 or 3 years. Actually, during the pandemic, that's when people started approaching me for interviews. So definitely get your face out there. Just make sure that if people want to follow up with you, because after your interview is done, the first thing they're going to do is look you up online. So make sure you have an online presence. Does that answer your question, Anne? Okay, great. We got it. You're very welcome, Anne. My pleasure. So let's talk about your audience. You wouldn't want to be doing a podcast if no one's listening to it. You don't want to be like Dr.Vibe and say, hey, I'm just going to start a podcast and everyone's going to be listening. I was wrong. I had to do some work to get that started. Now, a little bit of a cheat code. When I did my first video podcast, I actually had my first guest as a gentleman who was on the show that was the most downloaded in my history. So he brought his audience to listen to my first video podcast. So those are little cheat codes that you can bring, but you have to have an audience. Do you have an existing audience? Do you have an email list? Do you have a social media following? Do you have blog readers? Do you have YouTube channel subscribers? It's always easier if you already have an audience. And I'm really going to say too, these days, the best audience you can have, one of the best audiences, is if you have an email list and you send out newsletters. And the reason why I'm saying that, platforms like Instagram, Facebook, there's something called an algorithm, and TikTok, algorithm. And high level, algorithm basically controls who sees your content, when they see it. When you do a newsletter, you control that. You send it out. You can monitor when people see it. There's no algorithm controlling their access. When they get it in their mailbox, they get it. So I really want to encourage you, if you don't have an email list, maybe start one. And even if you have 20 people on it, that's better than 0. It's a good start. And again, any group of people who have expressed an interest in hearing from you can become potential listeners. So anyone that's interested in your product or service, if they're not on the email list, they can be a potential listener to your podcast if you're going to go that way. Any questions? All right, let's talk more about the audience, because the audience is very, very key here. So if you don't have an existing audience, or even you have a small one, make sure you have the resources to start building one. Like I said, email list, reach out to them individually, Here's something I see entrepreneurs don't do enough. Do you do surveys? And don't feel bad if you don't, because 85 to 90% of the entrepreneurs I speak to, do you do a survey? No. I would encourage you, and you can even do surveys in Google. It's a Google Forms. You can do them for free. Why is it good to do a survey if you're a podcaster? You keep track of what's going on in your audience's lives. What do they want? You can ask them, what subjects would you like to hear? You're engaging with them. Saja says, no following, but a small email list. Is that a good start? Yes, absolutely. Also, do I recommend growing our followers before starting work? No, just start. You've already got a small email list. You have a potential audience already. You want to grow it along the way. But I would also say too is build the relationships with your audience. Because if you're offering a service or product that they know about, if they tell other people about it, that makes you look good. So definitely you can wait, but there's no perfect moment. Like I said, I started with nobody. And I've been blessed. I didn't share this at the beginning. Over the last month, I've had over 70 new followers or subscribers on my YouTube page. And I just told people subscribe, and they've subscribed. And also other people have told people, you should listen to this show. So Saga, does that help you? And again, you can certainly reach out to me offline if you wish. But yeah, if you have a small list, definitely I would encourage you. I had nothing. I had nothing. Like I said, all I had was my laptop, this, and a dream. That's all I had. So definitely, you're very welcome, Saja. So yeah, so many people think there should, and again, I said this earlier, you think your show's going to drive you more audience. Well, it's just one of the many things that's going to drive you to people wanting to know more about your product, your service, or your business. So just realize that. Just realize that. Any questions? And I'm loving the questions I'm getting already. Anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll move on. So next up, again, and I'm spending time on audience for a reason, because you need an audience. If you don't have an audience, no one's listening to you, and you don't want to have a podcast that no one's listening to. So podcasting is an investment, and I've said that earlier on. It is an investment. So I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm doing a show and I have to do the production, the show, the post-audio editing, if you take everything in total, you're looking at about 5 hours of work. You're looking at about 5 hours of work, right? So you have to realize your audience, to listen to a podcast is free, but for you, it takes up a lot of time. So remember, really think about it. Is the investment worth your time? And I'm not trying to deter you, but it does take time. It's just like everything else. Everyone sees the finished product, but they don't see the work it took for that finished product. Are there any stats on what's the best length? Gonna come to that. Okay, I'll talk about that now, because I know there were some questions about it earlier. And it was something that I was working on earlier. So when it comes to podcasts, the average podcast right now is 25 to 30 minutes for a podcast. Now, it doesn't mean if you go longer, it's a bad thing, but the average podcast goes 25 to 30 minutes. Now, here's an interesting fact. 25, if you take all the podcasts that are out there, 25 to 30% of the listeners drop off after the first 5 minutes. So if you don't have engaging content, or you haven't built up that following, because when you have a following, they're going to stick with you all the way through. But realize that first, especially 5 minutes of your podcasts are critical. You want to make sure you have engaging content that people will watch past that 5-minute barrier. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I know Jordan had shared with me that was one of the questions. So I have some information on that. I didn't want to go too deep on it, but I was going to bring it up during this conversation today, because someone's like, how long is it going to be? So I'd say for starters, if you got 20 to 30 minutes, that's a good starting point for a podcast. If you do something that's 10 minutes long, it can be effective. And again, it depends. Some people, if you're doing something every day, like say Dr. Vibe's podcasting tip of the day, I'd only make that 3 or 4 minutes. Quick, to the point. But if you're doing a once a week show, I would say 25 to 30 minutes. Is that helpful, Lyndon? Great. Now I'm a little bit of an outlier. Would you recommend podcasts live or pre-recorded? I've always done live. Wouldn't say always. Most of the time I do live. I like doing live because I like the engagement. But again, I would say try and adjust. And also, if you have an audience, ask them what they would like. Because if you're broadcasting live and a lot of people are missing it, but if they're catching it on the replay, yes, I would go live. But if you have something pre-recorded and you know what time you have the chance to get the highest amount of views, yeah, I like live. I like the engagement in real time. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it being pre-recorded, but that person, if they have a question especially, a lot of people like to have their questions answered in real time. So this is what I would suggest, Linda. If you do a live, also make, like we're doing this today, make the replay available, but also make sure whatever platform you put it on, that someone's monitoring that site if any questions come up. Because they weren't able to do it in real time, but even if they can't see it in real time, they've taken their time to ask a question, take the time to respond it in quick manner. Is that fair? Wonderful. Anybody else? Loving the questions. Would knowledge sharing podcasts work better live? Yeah, okay, I like that. This is one of my big things I'm on these days. If you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're doing a show, teach more, sell less. I'll say it again. Teach more, sell less. And I thought about this the other day. I got a question for everybody. Just came to my head. Jordan goes, Dr. Vibe's on it now today. How many people in here are business owners or entrepreneurs? Put up your hand or say yes in the chat. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. Love it. Okay. Yes, 10 times. Okay. So I have a question for everyone here who's a business owner. And it's, what are you selling when you're a business owner? I'm going to give a different twist than probably many of you think. What are you selling if you're a business owner? Yourself, okay. A lifestyle, okay. A brand, okay. A brand. Oh, Paul Osborne has got me. Okay. And Jay, okay. A way to help solution. Okay, some people have hit it on the head. This is just my thought. When you're a business owner, you are selling a solution. You're not selling a product, you're selling a solution. Doesn't everyone want solutions to their problems? So this is my entrepreneurial head a little bit here. When you're an entrepreneur, and even through your podcast, getting back to that person who said, or I said, teach more, sell less. Teach people. If you can teach them, they're going to become, you can tell them how to do it. Most of the time, they're going to hire you to do it because they don't have the time to do it. So teach more, sell less. Teach more, sell less as an entrepreneur. Any other questions as we're going on here? Is everyone okay? Is it a good flow, good energy? Give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. All right, good stuff. Saga, how do I explain what you mean by teach more? Well, I'm doing it right here. I'm teaching you the fundamentals of starting a podcast. I'm not selling anything. I'm just teaching you from my experience, from my lens. So I'm showing you or giving you the best practices on how to do something. Does that make sense, Saga? And I really want to have people think about it. You're selling, as business people, you're selling solutions. Yes. Yes, knowledge sharing podcasts. Yeah, you want to share. You want to share. Some people here who watch me live, I love that, the sharing of knowledge. I want the audience to provide things to me that I don't know that will also help the audience. Saga says, what if my business is about teaching? What is your business, Saga? I want to know what your business is. What is your business? I want to hear what it is. And let's see if I can help you in real time in that, in regards. It's about teaching. What are you teaching? Okay, I will move forward and wait for Saga to answer because I know time is ticking like the sand in the hourglass. Okay, so just at the bottom here of this slide, having an audience before you start podcasting means you have a base of people excited to make the investment of their time. So even if you have 10 people that you have in social media or through a mailing list, start. If you're into it, get it started. Again, don't be like Dr.Vibe and have nobody, okay? Unless you have to. What is the average charge for? Okay, that one, I will say, contact me directly or come back to the next session in regards to the average charge. So when you see the end of this, email me and I can talk to you about that, the average charge, because it depends. What do you need? Do you need someone to produce it? Do you need someone to get the guests for you? So that's a variable question. If you're just talking about production, it's one thing. Are you talking, no, what about pre-production? What about post-production? That's a many layered question. So email me on that. Saga, you're saying we help educate individual architects by teaching them about Canadian local code and design standards. So you could start a podcast talking about that. Talking about local code and design standards. Maybe you can get some people who are in that industry to come on your podcast and talk about it. Because your audience will be hearing it right from the people that are in that industry. Does that answer your question? Parisa, is once a month too low for frequency? I think so. But again, if you have an audience, ask them if once a month is enough. Because remember, if you do one episode and it goes in 1 month, that's the longer you don't do an episode, the more they're going to potentially forget about it. So just think, there's a lot of competition out there for people's time. They have their own personal lives. They have, if they're working, they got a lot of things going on. So once a month, maybe a little bit, especially these days with so many things going on. If you can do it more than that, that'd be great. Just my personal opinion. Okay, let's see if I can get up here for a second. I missed a comment here. Okay, this comment. So I need to run. Something has come up with my kid. No problem. It's also I was seeing session 2 and 3. Appreciate your easy stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. I received that. Hope everything is okay with, as you said, your kid. And we'll see you for session 2 and 3. And also make sure you watch the replay here. Okay, Saga, that has answered your question. Marvelous. Let's continue on. If you're a business owner, we always got to consider our business needs and our business goals. So business and entrepreneurs who are best suited for starting podcasts are ones who've done, again, building an audience and attracting followers, but you're having a chance of converting those followers into customers. So that's where the teach aspect comes in. They're following you. What do they need to be taught? What are their needs, goals, and desires? Something I learned a long time ago. There's the old axiom, and some people may know that with business, you want to get someone to know, like, and trust you. Has anyone heard that before? Getting someone to know, like, and trust you, John. Now, I have two more parts to that. Do you know what they want, and can they afford it? You may like me, but if I don't know what you want, I can't offer you a thing. So that's why I want to find out what you want by surveying and then teach how you can do it. And then you could say, oh, Dr. Vibe, I need your help because you know more than me in this. I don't got the time. Or someone who does this sort of stuff with podcasting, you go to that. So know, like, and trust. Do you know what they want? And can they trust you? Because again, it's a people business. And podcasting can bridge the gap by giving your audience a way to learn more about you and discover how you can, again, help them in a way that goes beyond a blog post or an Instagram feed. It can take you a little bit further. Any questions about your business is very critical. Very, very critical. And one of my key words when I'm talking business, alignment. You want to make so you may have an idea about a podcast, but what happens if your audience wants something different than what you think they need? You want to be aligned with your audience in business. And as my mentor told me, you can be passionate and you can have purpose, but if it isn't aligned with your audience and with yourself, it's going to be a tougher climb, right? So I know working with the people in Innovation Guelph, their passion and their purpose is to help business owners. That's who they are, and that's what they do. So it's alignment. So when you're in communication with them, they are who they say they are, and they act in that way. Same thing with your podcast. Make sure it's aligned with your audience. Next up, with business needs and goals, it's not a medium that optimizes itself for generic repurposing. So your podcast shouldn't just be another marketing channel. It is a labor of love. Let me tell you, people, it's work. Sorry to tell you that. But for me, it's hard work. For you starting off, if you go this journey, it may be hard work, but I want it to be something that you get to do instead of something you got to do. There's a big difference. I've always been excited to do this because I knew that I was helping people and it was bigger than me. So if you go through this journey or start this journey or want to take it to another level, make sure it's not about you and it's something you get to do, not got to do. So it can grow your business as long as you take that attitude and willing to do some hard work. For me, it's hard work. It's not hard work anymore. But you have to have a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of heart and work and a little bit of grunt work too. Sorry to tell you, just want to be honest. It's going to be some grunt work at times. Okay. Aldofina, you have a question. Let me take a look. Wesel is an employment social enterprise with green blue economy. And, we use existing media training certificates. We are sourcing, okay, globally. Let me just see the rest of it. What strategy would you use to best leverage your niche content? Okay, so you work in the green blue economy. First thing that comes to my mind, starting a podcast with leaders in the green blue economy, whether locally or globally. You may need to educate your audience on, just do maybe your first episode, say what you're all about, tell them what the green and blue economy is. So get that understanding, because not everyone knows about green. They know, more probably people know about the green economy, not as many probably know about the blue. Educate them first on what the green and blue economy is, and then start sourcing people who are leaders, who are in that. Maybe you have businesses that are working in the green and blue economy. Invite them on their show. It's a win for you. It's a win for them. It's a win for your audience. And it's interesting. I have not heard too many companies that are in the green and blue economy. There's an opportunity there for you. I haven't heard, I don't know if I know of a podcast, whether it's audio or video, that's doing content on green and blue economy. So there's an opportunity there. Does that answer your question, Aldofina? And it's good. I finally know what your business is, because you're usually on my Monday and Friday morning shows. So it's good to know a little bit more about what you do. So thank you for that question, and thanks for sharing. Did I answer your question, though, most importantly? Okay, hold on here. All right, for some reason, I can't move my slide. Hold on here. I'm having slide difficulties, Jordan.
Do you want to stop sharing and then reshare?
Maybe let's give it a whirl.
Might need a refresh.
Give everyone a break. Everyone's still good?
Getting thumbs
Excellent.
up. Awesome.
Let's see if it's still not moving. Uh-oh.
With your arrows on the keypad too?
Something's weird here. Yeah, it's not moving. Sorry, family. Just give me a quick second. It's not, seems like it. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to, yeah, this was an issue here. Okay, give me a second. Grayson.
I also have your slide, so if you need me to share, just let me know.
Yeah, why don't we just, in lieu of time, I don't want to stop the energy.
Sure.
So if you can do that, that would be great.
One moment.
See, this is true collaboration, family, in real time. Yeah, it just seems that something's frozen here. So I'm just going to shut I have a client, need to see you soon. Okay, no problem. Thanks for stopping by. All right. Okay, so let's go, if you can, Jordan, the next slide, please. Okay. So here are some questions you can ask yourself to determine if starting a podcast may be a good fit for you and your business needs. Next slide, please. First of all, do you need to focus more on growing your audience or nurturing the potential customers you already have to get them to pay more attention? If the need is to nurture the potential customers who you already are paying attention with, podcasting may be the best thing for you. Next up, do you want to answer questions or address your audience concerns in a way that you haven't been able to do in a blog post, email, or social media post? So say you're putting stuff on Instagram, Facebook, and you want to get more deep into answering their questions and queries. One of the best ways is a podcast. You can go deeper, and it's not just on a text, it's verbal for people. Next up, do you need to expand your network and learn more about people you're interested in, whether they're colleagues or potential customers? Podcasts can help it. Many times I have guests on my platform. I want to know more about what they're doing, and they want to talk about what they're doing to an audience. So it's, again, a win for the audience, a win for myself, and a win for that person. They get to promote their business, product, or service. Next up, do you need a way to develop and experiment with new ideas to support your audience? Podcasting is a great fit. And I hear from so many people, oh, there's so many other podcasts like doing the same thing I am. Yeah, but they're not delivering it like you. You have your own voice. And also, too, if you're starting a podcast and you feel that someone else is doing the same thing, listen to those other podcasts and find out, what are they not doing? There's opportunity to find out what they aren't doing, or you bring your flair, your style, your expertise, your knowledge, your passion to see them win to a broadcast. There's a lot of people who look like me who do the same thing I do. But one of the ways I like to be different is, and this is one of my one of my people say one of my gems before someone comes on my show, especially for the first time, I say, we're not doing an interview, we're doing a conversation. Many people freeze up when they say, oh, I got to do an interview, I'm so nervous. I say, we're doing a conversation. More relaxed. And I tell them, I'm here to make you look good. Because the show's not about me, it's about the guests and their engagement with the audience. So people skills are important. We'll get to more of that probably in the second module. So I think next slide, I think we maybe, here we go. I got a strange question for you. Do you like podcasts? Okay. It seems to me be a very weird question to ask, but if you don't like hey, good. Yes, good. It may be hard to start a podcast if you don't like podcasts. You think? Maybe? I don't know. Like, do you have some shows that you listen to on a regular, but I am neutral? Okay. How I spend most of my day. Oh, Camille, good stuff. Are there shows that you listen or wait for the new release? Do you listen to podcasts part of your daily life or even weekly life? Do you subscribe to any podcasts? Do you subscribe to any podcasts in your business or service that you're involved in? Think about it. Camille says balance educational and entertainment. All right. So as it says here, if I put here, loving podcasts is an essential part of the equation, because you're going to have to develop a show if you go this route that other people love. So if you don't like doing it, why should they like what you're doing? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Right? So at the end of the day, podcasting only works if your audience loves the show. As I said earlier on, would you like to be doing a podcast and no one listens, no one downloads it? So if your audience has a casual take it or leave it attitude about your podcast, you're not going to see the benefits. I am blessed at this time, especially for the shows I do on Monday and Friday mornings. When we hit that live button, there are usually 10 people already in the room. And they're the regulars. They are waiting for us to come on. So one thing you want, especially with your podcasts, you want an encore effect. You want to have an encore effect. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me ask by definition here. What's an encore mean? What does an encore mean? Again, right. They keep coming back. They want more. Exactly. So what you want with your podcast and even with your business and services, you want the encore effect. You want people who want more of you. Okay. Question, what are the top 2 benefits you have experienced from podcasting? I've learned so much. I have learned so much, and I've heard incredible stories about people. The stories that I've heard, some of the people have given, they've given me incredible stories, and I've learned a lot. So it's helped my personal development and also listening to the stories of others, getting educated. Now, the thing is, I don't keep that in me. I share it with other people. So I don't do podcasts for myself. I do it for the audience. I do it for the guests, through me, not in me. That's why I love to do podcasting. And I want to help people win. My audience and also the people come on, I want to see them win, and I want to see them grow and get clarity. Okay. Next slide. I know we're coming near the end here. Okay, so we have a recap for today. We've talked about what is a podcast. We've talked about the history of podcasting. We've chatted about the benefits of starting a podcast. We've chatted about, is podcasting right for your business? We've also talked about making the time to podcast. Also, having an existent audience and what are your business needs and goals. So I'll just warn everybody, the first episode is light. The next one is pretty intense. This is the appetizer, and Jordan knows how much work the second section is. There's a lot of stuff. So I didn't want to overwhelm people. And as I said at the beginning, there's so many things I could cover. So I wanted to keep it at a manageable amount of time, because I know an hour and a half can be a lot for people, and I don't want to be communicating one way. I'd rather have the interaction. But those are some of the things we've covered in the 101. Next slide. That's all, folks. And then questions and comments. I don't know if you have any more, but fire away. Was it okay for everybody? Was it manageable? How can we sign up for 2 and 3? Jordan will come on in a minute. Diana says, feel free to unmute yourself and turn your video on to ask questions. Sure. Camille says it was enjoyable. Yeah, unmute yourselves.
Can I ask a question?
John,
please?
You certainly may ask a question.
Amazing, amazing. So it's lovely to see you all the ones I can see you. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Vibe. It's been amazing. My question is, how do you feel about 2 people being presenters in a podcast?
Have no problem with that. The key thing is that you flow well together.
Okay, perfect.
So making sure that you flow well together, like on the show I do for Dad Central, my co-host is more like this, where I'm but we play off well with each other. So he will ask questions that I don't ask, and but we watch each other's back. So when you're doing a co-hosting show, the audience is looking at both of you to make sure you flow well together. Because if you're not flowing well together, they're not going to watch. Because there's a disconnect between the hosts. I don't know. They don't seem like they're on the same. And I'm sure if you've watched any shows that have co-hosts, you enjoy the ones where there's a good harmony and a good flow together. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But also, too, now you're planning 2 of you. So you got to make sure, are you going to be doing shows together all the time? That means 2 schedules plus whoever you're interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So just realize that.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you.
No problem. So I do both. I've done shows on my own or conversation on my own. And as I mentioned, with myself and Ryan, we co-host most of the time Monday and Friday mornings. I've hosted conversations where I've had 10 people and I've been the only host. So I don't want to scare anybody. I don't expect you to get to that level, but if you're able to, again, when you're hosting a podcast, the audience at first is looking to see you, but eventually they're going to look on the guests, but they want to make sure that you've got stuff under control. Thank you. I appreciate the question. Anybody else?
There are a couple in the chat.
Well, let's see. Let's chat it up. Maybe.
Starting underneath Aldosinas about the masterclass.
Masterclass. Let me see. Let me just look. Okay. Are you going to cover technical aspect of podcasts like the microphone specs and setup? Yes, part 2. Because if I go into that we'd be here for another hour and a half. I could spend an hour just on microphones. So definitely part 2 will cover equipment high level wise, because again, there's a lot of information on part 2 that basically part 2 is the nuts and bolts, as we call it, of podcasting. So I'll be covering that part 2. Absolutely. What are the 2 top things important in engaging audience, to engage the audience and finding success? Okay, part 1 about engaging the audience, listen to them. And if they're not engaged, ask them questions. Like today, I've asked you questions and asked for your feedback. Audience and finding success. Abida, my question is, what is your definition of success? Everyone's definition of success is different. So what?
Okay.
So what,
if I'm going to invest my time in a podcast, I would see my success in when I'm engaging the audience, I'm having a increased number of people coming to listen to me. But most important is that it's converting into a kind of result that they wanted. So, they are benefiting from it.
So,
that's my success to me, if people are benefiting from my podcast.
So my question, and I love that because you answered your question, but I would go a little bit deeper. I would ask your audience, what does benefit mean to them? How are they benefit, or what benefit do they want to get from watching or listening to your podcasts?
Mm-hmm. I feel, there's lots of messaging and lots of information all the time being delivered to us. So that's, I'm perceiving this as a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But will they accept it as a benefit? Or, the challenge of, is it one more person now giving us their opinion? How do we cut that clutter,
2 words, ask them.
Okay.
Ask them. Get them to tell you, because what you assume and what they assume may be 2 different things. Mm-hmm. And if they're 2 different things, I said a few moments ago about alignment, there's no alignment there. So right. Don't be afraid to ask them. You may even want to do a podcast if you're doing it live, saying, hey, I'm doing an Ask Me Anything show, and I may have some questions for you.
Oh, yes.
Ask me live. I've done that periodically on my platform where we call it a town hall. And we've just asked people to ask us questions. And one of the things we just did recently on the show is any of our regulars, if they wanted to come and join us for a live show, we invited them.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
We invited them, and they I'll say Camille came on for a show and another gentleman came on, and they had a great time. So we want to make it a co-creative podcast. We don't always want to be drugged. We want the audience to help, and let's work together for success.
Yep.
Is that fair?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, Diana's provided a link for part 2 and part 3. So please check in the chat. We would love to see you again. I would like to. What is your reason for using a digital background versus your actual location? I like to be different. I like to use different backgrounds. Like, I don't know if it's Linda. Linda always wonders, what background does Dr.Vibe have coming on next? So I've had the same one for a few, but I will be changing it up for the next broadcast. If you do come back, there'll be a different background. I like that look, and it just, for me, gives a more professional look for me, because I consider myself, I am a serious broadcaster. I am a serious broadcaster, so I want to give a look of professionalism for me to my audience. That just makes me feel comfortable. So that's the reason I like to use, but whatever rocks with you. And believe me, if your audience don't like it, they're going to tell you. Right? The audience will tell you if they don't like it. So Jay, I hope that answered your question. And if you want suggestions on different software that you can use, certainly ask me. Also, Diana's put up a link for your feedback. It is critical, we know, and also I know how we can make it even better for you. Lindan says, you mentioned the first 5 minutes matter a lot. Do you have a formula for what you need to communicate in that time? My formula is this. When I don't even call them guests. When I have friends coming on my show, I say the word friends, and you'll see the guests go, oh, that's so nice. We're a friend. I'll read their bio, and then what I will do is, tell me a little bit about life growing up. Get them to share a little bit about their story, because you'll get to their professional, what they do. But I like to ask people about, how was their life growing up? What things did they have to deal with? Ask them a little about their education. So it gets not only for the audience to find out, but it gets them comfortable talking about a little bit about their background. And here's something that will scare a lot of people. I've done over 4,000 conversations. I've only had prepared questions for about no more than 50 of them, because I do a conversation and I listen to what the guests or my friends and the other people say, and my questions are based on what they tell me. Why do I do that? Because they feel like they're talking to themselves. And you're following and you're listening to them, and you're giving them respect. You're asking questions based on what they shared you. So you're respecting them, and they will open up more. Yes, for many of you, you're thinking about having business podcasts. Fully get it, but get them to share some of their story. How did they get to where they are? If they're an entrepreneur, did they ever fail in previous business ventures? How did they bounce back? We all love overcomers. Get some of their story in. I've been blessed at times to meet some significant people. And I don't ask them about what they do. I say, how's your family? What's this, that, all those other things. And they'll say, you know what? No one ever asked me. It's so nice to someone ask me about that, because I'm tired of doing the same sort of thing over and over and over again. And if you're doing a podcast, business podcast, if the person's done other interviews, listen to other interviews that they've done. So you hear their style, how they talk, what was asked, what wasn't asked, those sort of things. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, let's keep on going with. Yeah, so the first 5 minutes are very important. Another thing too, Linda and everybody here, if you're doing a show with somebody, try to have a pre-show conversation ahead of time with them, like maybe a few days before, so you can get to know them and you can have some rapport with each other. Now, if you can't do that, try to have them come on the show about 15 minutes before you go live. A, gives them a chance to forget what they were coming from, so they're clear. B, it gives them a chance to settle down. Because the first 2 or 3 minutes before you go live are critical, because you want your guests to be in the right frame. You want to make sure technically everything's okay and they're relaxed. Does that help, Lyndon? That's really important. That's one of the things I really do. I like to communicate with people coming on the show ahead of time, if possible. Whether it's phone call, whether it's video call, if you can do that, so they get comfortable with you. Okay, next question. Do you mind mentioning 1 or 2 pieces of software for backgrounds, assuming you'll go into more detail next session? Okay, the one I use, it costs, well, again, because of a good relationship, I got it for free. It's a background called Wirecast, but it costs money. So Wirecast is the one that I use. And I think with platforms like Zoom and others, they're actually providing some backgrounds that you can use. But what I like with Wirecast is that it allows me to customize my backgrounds. So I can put up whatever images I like, and it can. So Jordan, remember, Dr.Vibe, you have to have a different background next time, okay? All right. So please share the one about case. So that is answered. Good, Linda, I answered it. Love that, much easier, even easier. Knowing the person's background is ideal. Pre-convo. Yes, thanks. Okay. We've got about 5 minutes left. Anyone else have any more questions? Was it of value? Positive value, that is. Thank you, Jay. Okay, I love this. Main takeaways. Make sure you put that in the feedback. Main takeaways. I love that. The key. Audience gets into you. Partners have an open, less rigid format. Yeah, again, I'd like to do conversations. because if you're bringing someone on a podcast or a show, you want them to have a good experience. And that's another thing. When they finish, try to see if they can stay on for about 5 minutes to make sure that they had a good experience. And also, when you put it out live, give them the link for them to share with their audience. Make sure you do that. And also, this is another, people say, here's another tip. I love when people come on for the first time and they say, that went by so fast. And there was things I didn't get a chance to talk about. You know what I tell them? That's why we're going to do a part 2, because you didn't get everything in. So that's some things I've learned along the way. Yes, gained a lot today. Good, Abida. Look forward to the next 2. Thank you. Very about Mickey. Very well. And yes, engaging. Thank you. Lots of ideas are bouncing around my head. Well, feel free, if you see my email address, to reach out to me and see if we can get you some clarity on those ideas. But I love that the ideas are flowing around in your head. Anybody else? I think we're into the 3-minute countdown. Mickey, you're smiling.
Diana just sent me a message and said she'll sign up for my podcast.
Yay! Love it. Make a decision and take action. Beautiful. Love it. Absolutely. We have 1 or 2 more questions. I don't like keeping people past your time. So we got 2 minutes because time is the most valuable thing that you have. Oh, if someone doesn't have us, I'll give you, and this isn't included in the course content, but getting guests can be challenging. So I'm going to give you a real life Dr. Vibe experience. There was a lady that I wanted to get on my platform. I reached out to her initially last January. She gave me the email address of her manager. Manager never got back in touch with me. Never. A few weeks ago, I'm a foodie, by the way, and I was at a restaurant eating some rum cheesecake. So I went on Insta. Diana likes that one. Maybe when I get out to IG, I'm going to bring out a rum, just 6-inch rum cheesecake for everybody. So I don't do a lot of Instagram Live, but I went on Instagram Live and I just said, this rum cheesecake's so good. It's so fantastic. Guess who was watching it live? The lady I wanted to reach out to, who reached out to back in January. So what did I do? I messaged her right then and there after I finished my live broadcast and say, hey, would still like to get you on the show. Haven't heard anything back from your manager. She says, let's book it now. So sometimes it can take a while to get people you want on your platform. And there is some strategies I do for that also. But sometimes it can take a while because remember, you're dealing with other people's time, not just your time. But she came on the platform. She came on, she knocked it out of the park, and she shared it on 5 other of her and her husband's platforms. The conversation has over 2,500 views. So there's a strategy also about getting guests on, who you should ask, how can you approach them, etc. There's also a strategy that I may or may not get into part 2, but there's always a Q&A part 3. So we are at the bell. Thank you, Abida. Thank you for the clap. Jordan, it's your stage now.
Thanks, Dr. Vibe. Yeah, we're at time now, everyone. Thanks so much for staying on. Diana dropped a feedback link in the chat box. So We would really, really appreciate your feedback for the next couple sessions and other events that we do going forward. There was also a link to the next session, but you will receive an email from me early next week with some follow-up from today and the links to register for next time. So there's no chance that you'll miss them. We're just really thankful for you, Dr. Vibe, to have you here today, and our
pleasure.
ASL interpreters. Thanks so much. Next session's on February 2nd at 1 p.m. Dr. Vibe will explore logistics and equipment, and I know that's highly anticipated as well. Yes, Dr. Vibe.
Two last things. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.